Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Defender podcast. We're here today live from Nieuwegein in the Netherlands at Experts Live 2026. And man, it's been fun, Koos, has it not? So far, what a fantastic conference.
It has. And of course, first of all, to see you in person again, to invite you into my house, to show you a little bit around.
Yeah.
Ticking off all the Dutch culinary dishes, of course.
Yes. It's been fantastic. I've had some fantastic food. I had chocolate for breakfast. You know, what's wrong with that? There's been some great beer. There's been some great conversations. It really has been a lot of fun. And you know, I go to a lot of conferences, and Experts Live, and especially the Netherlands, man, it's a next level. I'm just blown away by the level of organization, how fancy everything is. The conference venue, the coffee machines, just everything is absolutely next level. So it's been great, here we are. We've got some great things to talk about today. I want to take a little bit of time to break down the session that I'll be giving later this afternoon here at Experts Live. Talking a little bit about SecOps and, specifically SecOps for M365. Just some basic things, but I think basic but important. Koos, and you've got a really interesting topic. It's something we talked about in the car over the weekend.
It's so funny. So I actually had a different topic prepared initially, but we were talking about the FIDO2 keys, pass keys. Once again, it's an important subject, and we were discussing some things we were discussing with our clients. And then we're like, while we were in Utrecht enjoying a beer right next to the water, we were like, this could be a topic for the podcast, so let's do that instead.
Yeah. So.
And like you said, you can really see this is the OG Experts Live, right?
Yes.
I think 2,500 attendees or something like that. I think the organization was already joking it might be a little bit bigger than built, which is, I think, quite a compliment.
Yes.
And it's awesome that you traveled all the way from down under to come here to speak.
You know, it was a little bit of a long trip. I had to fly via the US, so 38 hours door to door, something like that. Well worthwhile though, to be honest. So definitely no place I'd rather be right now. I think there's more than 80 speakers here this last 2 days. So again, fantastic effort and really enjoyed myself.
Yeah,
so.
I think 24 different breakout rooms for sessions, and they're all filled the entire day.
Yeah.
And yours is the 1 o'clock, so I'll be joining that one.
Front row, hopefully.
Yeah. So start with your session, Chris. What are you going to talk about?
Yeah.
And guide us through the topic and the do's and don'ts.
So I'm talking about automation and specifically automating the stuff that can be tedious or boring in an M365 context, right? So no AI here. We're not talking about agents. We're not talking about stuff like that. We're talking about hardcore, old school automation and PowerShell, really. And one of the things that we find very often with customers in their M365 environments is that they have this sort of one-time configuration approach, right? They build it and then they just leave it be and kind of feel like that's good enough, right? We secured everything when we built it, so why do we need to do more? Well, the challenge is it's a moving target, right? There's always new things coming out, new features, new configurations, so you kind of got to stay on top of that. In addition, we find that attackers constantly get smarter, constantly evolving their methods. So we can't just keep things sort of the way they are. And so the reality is that the brutal truth here is that security operations in M365 very often are very manual and very inconsistent, right? Someone might be checking logs at some point, during the week or whatever to look for things, but there's no process that kind of helps drive consistency and automation. And so I wanted to really sort of take that concept and those things that I've learned and talked to customers about over the last few years and sort of drive them into a sort of a practical session where we can actually talk about the fundamental concepts, how we do things, why we do things, what sort of tools we can use, and then leave the audience with some really nice demo content or examples of how you could build a process that doesn't cost a lot of money, but adds tremendous value to what you're trying to do, right? Because I think that's the other thing is there's this conception or misconception that we can only be really secure if we spend a lot of money, right? We have to have a SOC, or we need to have a 24/7 SOC, or an outsourced MSSP or something like that. And that's not necessarily the case, right? You can start small, and those things are really cool. If you can afford it and you can have a 24/7 SOC, obviously you're going to be more secure. But you don't have to sacrifice security because you don't have a big budget. And really those are the folks I'm speaking to in this session, which is start small, build things that are going to be really, really impactful, and go from there. And so when we look at this concept of SecOps and what SecOps is, really it's that sort of that intersection between people, process, technology, right? And looking at that that operational side of security, right? We're looking at detections, we're monitoring things, we're looking at detections, we're looking for things, and then we take action on stuff. And that action just could be bringing a human into the loop of what we're doing and alerting. And then, of course, remembering what we've looked at, because we don't want to be looking at the same thing over and over again. So one of the things I kind of look at is going through sort of the foundation of what a good automation job looks at and looks like, and really you're looking at something that it looks at a set of configs, or it's something that looks at a state of events, right? So if you consider, you might be looking at a log file, right, which is something that just is a stream of data that's constantly happening, or you might be looking at a config, which is something that is static and is essentially a fingerprint, if you will, that may change, and you want to see if there's a change, versus a log stream where, every time you look at it, there's going to be different things. And so you want to sort of look at that concept of a fingerprint, which is that sort of base state, versus what we would call a watermark, which is the last time we looked at something, right? So from a log file perspective, oftentimes it'll be you'll be looking at a date concept. So you'd say, well, we looked at every event before this particular date. We've already seen those. We don't want to look at them again, because any action that needed to be taken at that point, we've already taken that, right? And that's really, really important, because very important concept here is to not re-alert or re-alert on something that you've seen before, right? And you would know this from your work in SIEM and the SOC world. The last thing you want to do is constantly keep alerting the same event, because folks start ignoring them, right? And that's really not something you want to promote.
Yeah, but obviously with the SIEM space, especially with Sentinel log analytics, you get a time-generated timestamp of when the event was ingested into your database. But you are a step before that in the log file, so you have to, like you said, keep track of where you left off. So I encounter similar issues when I build log collectors, collecting logs from databases or log files before they are sent into Sentinel. You have to keep some kind of track of a marker.
Correct. Yes, and so I refer to that in the context of this conversation as a watermark or a time watermark, and we actually do write that state to a log analytics table or something like that, so that you can keep track of it. The other thing that we might keep track of is the audit trail, right? A lot of customers only have 30 or 90 days worth of logging available to them in M365. So if you are looking for very specific things and you are going to take that data and you write it to some sort of audit log somewhere else, that gives you a really good audit trail that you could take back further than the 30 or the 90 days that you may have access to. So we talk about that kind of stuff as well. And then of course, really touching on secrets management and identity, right? And how do you, obviously when you need to run an automation or connect in to read a log files or something, there's permissions and identity associated with that. Well, how do we do that in a very secure way, right? Because ultimately, one of the things I want to take away, and I wish I had time to print T-shirts for this, is bad automation is way worse and way more dangerous than no automation, right? If you have an automation job that can run at a very high privilege, that's a problem for you, right? Because that can be exploited. Or if you have automations that have hard-coded credentials, again, that's another sort of area that can be exploited. So how do you really tightly control the identity that you use? Using something like managed identities and federation if you're going to go cross-tenant. And what do you do when you can't use those concepts, right? So if you, for example, have API keys and stuff like that, how can you still use them in a runbook without actually exposing them? So using things like Key Vault and stuff like that. So everything's kind of built around Azure and cheap or inexpensive, if you will, Azure services.
Yeah, because you're not using traditional compute, right? No virtual machines.
Correct.
Just cloud native resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we look at the building blocks of what we're doing, a lot of this is run or built around Azure Automation runbooks, taking those runbooks, running PowerShell, obviously in the runbooks. So we're using different modules to connect to things and expose different functionality. We're using Graph in many instances, so if we can scope the permissions down really tightly, and then to actually manage our our remember piece of this, what do we store our state and our watermarks and fingerprints. There are different ways to do that, right? So I actually go through some of the demos where we use log analytics for this, which is a perfect tool really for something like that. But also perhaps your outputs are JSON, right? So if you look, for example, at the Meister tool to do sort of some baseline analysis of your tenant, well, Meister does a really good job of outputting to JSON. You don't want to store that in log analytics, so a storage blob is a great place to put a JSON file and be able to compare JSON files that you had run previously. So,
or you could use, actually, now that I think of it, because JSON can be very easily split up into separate columns again. So you could theoretically create a table in log analytics where you just store the JSON, but then it splits out into separate columns again with the individual values.
Yeah, could absolutely.
But there might be too much properties in there. I don't know the exact format.
Yeah, and I think the whole goal of this session is to show different ways to do things, and depending on your comfort level with a particular service or a particular tooling, you may want to do it in a way that works better for you, right? Logged storage tables is another great, really cheap place to store things. So all of these things sort of work, and then when we look at our alerting pipeline, again, we look at different ways to alert, right? We want to, informational alerts. Email's a really good place. Just send an email alert if you wanted to, or maybe a Teams message to a particular channel. Those are good ways to provide informational alerts. But possibly something that's really critical, you may want to get hold of your team really quickly. So something like an SMS message or a WhatsApp message, which is what I'm going to be using in the demo. Could be really helpful, because you can get those to people really quickly, and most people are going to pay attention to a WhatsApp message, right?
That's directly on your phone.
Correct, and of course then you look at how do we route these based on severity, right? We don't want to just blast a WhatsApp message to everyone every time there's a log file generated. We actually want to put some intelligence into saying we're looking at correlations between multiple events. These things, when you correlate them together, it's multiple indicators of compromise, and that is a very good indicator that we're seeing three things. Good indicator that there's a problem. That's something you want to send to someone as a WhatsApp message, right? If someone changes their password, hey, you don't care about that necessarily. It's good to have informational. So we talk through all of this typologic stuff in the session. A look at some demo code that kind of does a lot of this as well, and then share some tips and tricks about what sort of things to do, right? So for example, if you're going to be writing automation, it's not a good idea to use user principal names or SMTP addresses in your code, right? Because those things can change. People get married, their last names change, the email addresses change, stuff like that. So good to be using sort of immutable IDs and GUIDs, that type of thing instead. We talk about vault secrets and not hard coding your secrets into the script. Failing loud and making sure that you make errors. Make them red, make them visible, because the last thing you want is to see green tick boxes on everything, but actually the script has failed or the automation has failed, and you don't really know what's going on. So you have this false sense of security that things are working when maybe they're not working. So I'll close off by just saying, share some of the use cases that we're looking at, or that we'll talk about in the session. So we'll talk about sort of break glass monitoring. So those break glass accounts that we all know that we have or need to have, looking at whether those accounts are logging in or not, right? Looking for logon events for those particular accounts. You really want to be alerted when someone's logging into your break glass account or tries to log into your break glass account. Definitely. Or if there's a group membership change or a role change on those accounts, you want to know about those pretty quickly. And guest and external collaboration, sort of hygiene and monitoring, being able to clean that stuff up. Business email compromise monitoring, so looking at mailboxes for indicators of compromise. And this is one of the demos that I'm going to do, is actually looking to see if you look at your mailboxes in your environment, if someone creates a forwarding rule on that mailbox.
Yeah.
That happens. Like, you would expect to see that in an organization. Obviously, we want to prevent or discourage folks from sending forwarding externally, and that happens by default these days in tenants. But if you see on a particular mailbox that there are an external forwarding rule and a bunch of inbox rules also created at the same time, well, that could actually mean that mailbox has been compromised and there's an attacker trying to cover their tracks, right? So then, we react to that slightly differently. So that's something for BEC, mailbox monitoring. Conditional access reviews, something that you could sort of track. App and OAuth consents, those sort of app registration stuff. That's another really good use case for automation. And then sort of the showcase demo for the session is configuration baseline drift. And I think we've really talked about this here before, and using the Meister tool to determine your security baseline for your environment and then monitor against that. And so that's something I've put a lot of time into building out. Being able to do a delta compare between a Meister scan that you did yesterday and a Meister scan that you do today. And being able to actually show what those differences are between yesterday and today, and how that could have changed. So all up, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. There's some really cool demo code. I want to say it's about 3,000 lines of code, PowerShell code that and there's some bicep.
Not written by Claude in this case.
Not written by Claude.
Well, yourself.
Claude did help a lot. Claude helped a lot. I'm not going to lie. But there's some bicep code there to be able to set up your log analytics workspaces and stuff like that. And really what I want to encourage folks to do is look at these use cases, look at the building blocks here, and go off and be creative and build things that are going to help your organization, right?
It was so cool to see yesterday, because we were from the Dutch Microsoft Security Meetup, we were able to do a masterclass yesterday on the pre-day of Experts Live, and we organized a capture the flag where we had people do some forensics on some simulated attacks. And you were there as well as an attendee, and somebody approached us with just some generic questions about making users aware by sending them an email when something happened on their machine. And it was a perfect fit to your session, and you will be showing a couple of those examples. A perfect testament that there is a need for this, for
100%.
solutions like this.
And this is the great thing, is that people have the ideas, right? And that's the thing, is like take the ideas. If I can provide some context and some building blocks for the ways to do these things. This is not the only way, and it's not necessarily the best way. It's just a way of being able to tackle some of these problems. Hopefully everyone kind of moves forward and sort of increases their security posture a little bit. So I'm really excited about the session later on today. I think it's going to be a fun one.
I took a short peek at the GitHub repo you created. So you actually package everything up, right? For people to use with Bicep. All the resources are deployed automatically. So people can try it out quite easily. Yeah,
that's right. Make it easy as possible.
So sometimes we are joking that our podcast show notes are practically like blogs, right? And now you're also providing an entire package with software with it as well.
Yeah, that's right.
3 for the price of 1, I guess.
3 for the price of 1, that's right.
That's what the Dutch would like, actually. Nice. Looking forward to your session, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, so the FIDO key topic comes back again. But this case is a little bit different than we've spoken of before, I guess. So this all started with a hunt of mine to look for a secondary FIDO key, because I was actually starting to use the passkey, the FIDO key, the physical key all of the time on my laptop, and I was using a YubiKey Bio, just plugged in the USB-C of my MacBook. But I noticed that I preferred the passkey authentication over the existing authenticator app authentications I did in the past, because it's so much quicker. You can just tap the key and you're done. Instead of picking out the phone out of your pocket, do an approval, unlock it, or even in case of passkeys where you have to scan a QR code and go through all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm really relying on this FIDO key nowadays. But then obviously there came a time where I left it at home and I was in the office and I couldn't sign into anything. And now I had to register a one-time access password for myself and all kinds of tenants, or ask colleagues of mine to do that, which was quite a hassle, of course. So I was like, I need a second one. And am I going buy the second YubiKey again, or maybe look at different things? And this is where we had a discussion over the weekend. Where you were mentioning that you had these conversations with clients as well, right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
So what is the ideal form factor of your passkey?
Yeah.
Well, in my case, I was using USB-C because I think nowadays, I'm not sure if there are any devices without USB-C connections nowadays.
That's fair.
Even Apple moved from Lightning to USB-C a couple of years ago.
That's right. Yeah.
And you mentioned you had some of these USB A and C physical keys.
That's right. Yes, and I also have some NFC ones that are just look like a credit card, right? And I can definitely see some cool use cases for having the credit card stuff. You know, we were talking about car keys on your, and all sorts of other things that fit on a NFC type credit card, right? Access control systems as well. And so really convenient if you have a building access that also is NFC for your passkey, I guess. I'm not sure what sort of additional threat vectors there might be if you're carrying all that stuff around on one card. And of course we know NFC is something that there are sniffers and things like that available for. So haven't really spent the time to look into the specifics of it. But
no, well, that's why I thought I'd bring this topic today, because there are some pros and cons to every of these decisions, and it will obviously also, it depends, right? The standard consulting answer nowadays. But the NFC stuff is really interesting. But I did notice that whenever there is no biometric on a physical FIDO key, like NFC or just with the regular USB, like the dumb FIDO keys, there is always a PIN associated. So whenever you tap that NFC card, you also need to enter in a PIN. So that's always MFA bound to the physical key as well.
Right.
And in my personal opinion, when I go with NFC and I have to take a card from somewhere, tap it and have a PIN, it is not as quick as the biometric version.
Yes.
So I was like, I'm going to look for a biometric version first. That's my biggest priority.
Yeah.
And then maybe even look if I can find a smaller form factor.
Yeah.
And that's where I encountered actually a couple of interesting products. So the YubiKey Bio I was using was very good. It never failed my fingerprint scanner, but it was sticking out of my laptop. So whenever I was picking up my laptop and walking around with it, I was afraid to bump into something and break it off clean at the USB-C port, right? Yes. So I was looking into some smaller things. And YubiKey has these really, really tiny ones they call the nanos. They're just as big as a USB-C connector and they stick out a couple of millimeters. Yeah. I thought that's perfect, but there's a touch-sensitive plate on top, but that's only a capacitive sensor. Okay. So it will sense that you touch it and then asks for a PIN.
Gotcha.
And entering a PIN might not be that big of a deal if you just sign in the morning and keep signing in for the entire day. Yeah. But I'm not sure how it's with you, but I'm
multiple tenants, multiple accounts all day long, right?
All day long, right? So different clients, different tenants, clients with different tenants, etc. So you're switching the entire day depending on the day, and that's why I think entering that PIN multiple times a day becomes also a little bit of a hassle. Yeah, I know, first world problems, but still. So tapping the one, so I actually found two keys, and one of them I'm actually test driving right now. It's in my laptop right now. So this tiny thing. This is a FIDO key from Kensington. It sticks out 0.5 centimeter, I think, from my laptop, and it has a biometric sensor at the top end of the key. So whenever I go to a site, it lights up, and I just tap it at the side of my MacBook, and I'm logged in.
And then off you go.
Yeah. And I can actually keep it on my laptop when it's in my bag. Yeah. And because of the fact that it is still requiring biometrics, it still counts as multi-factor. So. Something that you have, the MacBook and the key, and something that you are, which is the biometric, without having to elaborate on the fact that you also need to open up and unlock my MacBook with biometric as well. But so I'm really fond of these, and I will also test out the a different brand I never heard before, but they actually reached out to me on LinkedIn. So it's an Authentrend AT Key Pro, and actually Jan Bakker recommended that one because it was the first FIDO key he started using with. And obviously Jan Bakker is Mr. Identity and Mr. Passkeys nowadays.
Yeah.
So he got me in touch with the Auth Trend guys, and there's one on the way. And the cool thing about that, it looks a little similar like the Kensington, but it also has a zinc alloy casing, which makes it probably feel a little bit more premium. It has some cool colored LED lights on them. Who doesn't like those?
That's right.
And another thing is, I was thinking, because it's a metal casing, I can put it in my laser and laser engrave something on it as well. So who knows, I'll make customized FIDO keys. That's every Defender FIDO keys.
That's right. And it was probably also cool, even if you can just identify them, right? Because that's the other problem, when you have a bunch of these keys floating around, you don't know which one is exactly the one that you're looking for at the time. So nice to be able to mark them or label them in some way.
Yeah, so what I did right now, actually, you can register multiple passkeys to your account.
Yes.
So what I did, I had, I think, 8 or 9 accounts on my FIDO key, the YubiKey, and I just went through one time, go register aka.ms/mysecurityinfo.
Yep.
If you go there, log in, you can just add a passkey. So I was adding for all of those 9 accounts, I added the second key. So now it doesn't really matter
which one you've got.
Which one I've got with me. I can just put it in, tap, and then I'm done. Yeah. And I much prefer that over the Authenticator app, also because I was switching phones in the past quite frequently as well. And if you lose your phone, buy a new phone, the passkey or the Authenticator app is device bound. You have to re-register everywhere.
Yeah, it can be a real pain, right?
Yeah, you have to call the customer, like, can you reset my MFA registration? So I
actually had heard Steve Gibson from Security Now talk about this problem as well. And I mean, I think in his context is obviously more in a consumer context where he's registering for, Google or Gmail or whatever. But what his solution to this is that he prints out the barcode that is generated for whenever he registers an MFA. So he'll print the barcode out, he stores that in a safe, and so if he ever loses his device or changes the device, all he has to do is rescan the barcode. And I thought that's bloody genius.
I always assumed that when you scan the barcode, it's like an OTP, a one-time password, and it will
I don't believe it is, because it's just a cryptographic representation of the key, right? And so I've always loved that concept of going, scan the barcode. So I've done that with a few things recently, because I'm in this weird transition between authenticator apps at the moment, where I have many MFA things on a particular app, and I'm trying to move to another app, and it's obviously a very time-consuming process to go through this whole thing. And so every time I add a new one to the new app and I remove the old app, I've been saving the barcode as well, just so that for future reference, I guess.
It's smart, but on the other hand, be careful with those barcodes.
Of course.
And especially when it comes to, I'm not even sure if you can do that with Entra, especially not with passkeys, but and I also noticed that I had a discussion with Mariel Fernando on LinkedIn while I was replying to Jan Bakker's post. And he actually uses the Nano and also uses syncable passkeys and just uses the iCloud keychain on his Mac to just store the passkey in there and sync it up to iCloud. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. It's rubs the wrong way with me when it comes to enterprise authentication to do it that way.
And I think that's the interesting part about this, right? Is you've got the enterprise way to do this and what you want your users doing, and then obviously you've got your consumer life, and those things do cross over sometimes. I'm going to apologize in advance as well for some noises you guys might be hearing on the background here. We're obviously at a live conference, and so we have people moving around and applauding and music.
To the ambience, right?
Of course. I'm sure we will hear the Experts Live radio come on pretty soon, because we're between sessions now, so we're going to hear some tunes here in a second. But
I think it adds to the atmosphere. But I have to do some audio editing afterwards to perhaps lower the noise floor a little bit. But
very, very nice. I'm going to take a look at those. I'm on the lookout for the perfect YubiKey for myself, or FIDO key for myself as well. And it's great to see that there are so many other manufacturers coming to the party and doing things right. Because I think for the longest time, YubiKey was the standard, and nothing wrong with YubiKey, obviously. But it's nice to see that there's some competitiveness, competition in the market.
Because YubiKey knows they were the only ones.
And I think that's the benefit of competition, right? Is that everyone has to compete for their market share, and the pricing gets adjusted to be able to do that. So nice to see other other vendors come out as well.
One thing I'd like to add to circle back to the NFC discussion. NFC can be very nice, and YubiKey has them as well with NFC capabilities, especially when you have to authenticate on your phone, right? You can just tap the key, the physical USB key on your phone, and authenticate. But because of the fact that the YubiKey or whatever key with NFC is not powered when it's not connected, there is never biometrics in there because there's no power to feed the sensor, the fingerprint sensor. And that's a big shame, so that's why I did not look much. Maybe there will be a FIDO key with some kind of little battery in there, which you could, well, that would be nice. If companies are listening, we want that actually. But even with USB-C on your phone nowadays, I'm an Apple user, so that's relatively new to me. I can actually just plug it in my phone or my iPad and authenticate that way, so it works perfectly.
No, very nice.
I hope this is helpful for people. I put some links in the show notes, obviously, to a couple of these examples, like the Kensington, like the Athentrend, AT-Key Pro, and the YubiKeys as well. So take a look at them.
Yeah, that'll be really helpful. Definitely something that I've had conversations with customers about, right? Customers coming to me saying, hey, what's the best form factor here?
Which one should I buy?
Yeah, which one should I buy? So very, very cool.
Yeah, and price makes a big difference then as well, especially if you buy hundreds of thousands of them at the same time.
That's right.
So,
That's right. Koos, community project. I guess I'm going to let you do this one today, given that it's your project.
I was wondering, am I allowed to bring in a community project? Self-promote, shameless plug.
I think that's okay.
You think that's okay? Okay, well, I appreciate it. This came out of nowhere actually. I was, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of Claude and Claude Code, but I was encountering an issue and I was actually surprised to see there wasn't any real solution of it just yet in the product. So whenever you go into terminal and you open up Claude Code in a directory, and you have a conversation there, you let them make some code or generate something or give you help on something. When you exit it out of the session gets stored in the projects folder, which is a hidden file in your user directory, and that project is linked to that folder. So whenever you go to that folder next time in the terminal and you type in Claude --resume, it will actually resume that previous session, so you continuing on the existing context which is there. The problem is when you have multiple sessions started from that same directory and you do Claude resume, you get an entire list. You say which session do you want to resume, and there's a short snippet. It's like an AI generated title based on the content of that.
And it's also the first part or the very initial part of the conversation. So if your conversation has drifted into something else, it can be very difficult.
It can be difficult to find. And also, I was running Claude Code, and it said, well, you don't have any sessions to resume here. And I was like, oh wow, in which directory was I working when I worked on this? I don't remember. And then I asked Claude, how do I resolve this? And it says, well, you can go into the projects folder and you have 80 files with these GUIDs, and one of them is probably your session to resume, so good luck with that. And I was like, why isn't there any tool to remove sessions? So when you go into Claude resume and you get the list, there was no option to say, okay, throw this one away, please. I don't need it anymore. It doesn't exist. So I was like, I have to create a script for that to help me out clean up the old sessions. So declutter, if you like, clutter, I don't know. So I made a little bit of a wordplay on that one, declutter, and it's actually a PowerShell-based script. I love some PowerShell. You just run it, it's just a PS1 file, you can put it in your path, so you can run declutter everywhere, and it will actually create a nice TUI, of course, should have a TUI, with all the projects you have, tell you in which folder they are linked, and then the contents of the same AI content within that. And it will also highlight the ones for you you'll probably want to throw away because of either the context is very small, there wasn't a custom name generated to it, so you can also it will automatically check everyone which you want to delete, press delete, and it will clean it up. And from there you can also rename your sessions to override the AI title with your own title. And I must admit, it's my own project, but I used it multiple times by now to find back stuff. And I also added a search function, so you can press F, and you just type in, I don't know, podcast, and it will show you all the sessions which contain the word podcast, and will actually highlight it in there. So it's finding your sessions, cleaning up your sessions, and recovering your sessions.
Very nice. Of course, a very, very, very cool little utility, and because it's PowerShell, obviously cross-platform, which is really cool. To you know, cater for the Mac guys and
PowerShell
and
call
gals
required,
as well.
of course.
Yes.
And it's also a big testament of how far we've gotten with AI coding, because I'm quite efficient with PowerShell, but not on a level that I could create this, because with the entire TUI, which takes over your terminal with shortcut keys and everything, I wouldn't know how to program that with PowerShell.
Crazy.
So Claude was a big help with that. And check it out. And I did some PowerShell tools in the past. They all ended up with an R as well. So I thought this one fits right into the family.
Yeah. And of course, you've shared your catalog here, so folks can come back and find all the other ones, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Check it out, folks. Obviously, get hold of Koos if you've got some feature requests or something else you'd like added. He'd love to add that in there.
I am pretty sure that Anthropic will eventually build this into Claude Code. So I am sure that this will be a short-lived project. But until now, it works brilliantly, in my opinion. So
that's awesome.
Thanks for having me highlight this, and I hope people will enjoy it as well.
No, that's awesome. That's
the
awesome.
GitHub link is in the show notes as well, of course.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that as we kind of get to wrapping up another in-person. I love doing these in-person episodes. They're always so much fun. It's really been a great few days here at in the Netherlands and at Experts Live. And thank you again for your hospitality. I much appreciate all the effort you put into showing me around and hosting me. So thanks for that. And
you're welcome, Chris.
I'm sure
it will take a while, I guess, before we see each other in person again. But
more than likely MVP Summit, I guess, would be the next one. But we'll keep pumping these out every month remotely until then. So looking forward to the next one. And thanks for everything, and thanks for listening, folks. Please reach out to us if there's something that you'd like us to cover, or some burning issues or anything like that, or even if you just want to say hi, that's cool too. And help spread the word of Everyday Defender and sort of what we're doing here. Thanks for listening again, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.